We often assume that when someone misses us, it should look obvious. Texts that arrive quickly, clear signals, consistent connection, and a kind of emotional transparency you don't have to decode. But with avoidance, missing you looks nothing like the picture you're used to. In fact, it often looks like the exact opposite of missing you. Avoidants experience longing in reverse. When a secure or anxious person misses someone, they move closer. When an avoidant misses someone, they feel the urge to move away. Not because their feelings are weak, but because their feelings run so deep they don't know how to regulate them. Missing you awakens vulnerability, and vulnerability activates an old internal alarm system, one wired from childhood experiences, past relationships, or emotional memories that taught them closeness is unsafe. So instead of leaning in, they distract themselves. Instead of texting you good morning, they scroll, they work, they stay busy. Instead of telling you that something reminded them of you, they push the thought away. Avoidants don't reach out when they miss you. They retreat because the intensity of the emotion threatens their sense of control. What you see is silence. What they experience is overwhelm. What you see is distance. What they feel is conflict. What you interpret as not caring is often them caring more than they know how to handle. But this truth is invisible from the outside. You never see the part where they replay memories at midnight. You don't see the moment they hover over your name in their phone, but feel too exposed to press call. You don't see how remembering your laughter makes them nervous because it reminds them of what they could lose. And you definitely don't see the self-protection instinct telling them if you stay distant, you can't get hurt. Avoidants miss you in secret. Their missing is quiet but heavy. It's not expressed in affection, it's expressed in withdrawal. And yet here's the most important truth. Their distance doesn't mean you need to chase. Avoidant behavior is theirs to understand and evolve, not yours to overcompensate for. Your job is not to decode invisible feelings or fix emotional patterns you didn't create. Your job is to understand the dynamics so you don't take it personally, and so you choose relationships where emotional availability is not a fight, but a standard. If you've ever felt confused or unchosen by someone avoidant, remember this: their silence is not proof of your lack of worth. It's proof of their lack of emotional safety. You can have compassion for their internal struggle without sacrificing your own needs. You deserve a love that reaches back, a love that shows its longing instead of hiding it, a love that feels secure enough to say, I miss you without fear. And if someone cannot meet you in that space, not because they don't feel, but because they don't know how, then your responsibility is not to shrink to fit their comfort. It's to stand firmly in your value until you are met with the kind of connection that doesn't run from closeness, but builds it. When an avoidant misses you, the experience is far more complex than the simple absence of communication might suggest. On the surface, it seems like nothing is happening. No messages, no calls, no visible sign that you occupy their thoughts. But internally, their mind is in a tug-of-war between longing and self-protection. Avoidants don't move toward what they want. When they feel emotionally stirred, they move away. Not because they lack feelings, but because the intensity of those feelings triggers an internal alarm system that tells them closeness is risky. So instead of expressing their longing in the way you might expect, through reaching out, seeking connection, or showing vulnerability, they retreat into themselves, convincing their body that distance is the safest option. This retreat is not casual, it is a conditioned response. Many avoidants learned early in life that expressing neediness, wanting closeness, or relying on someone emotionally was met with inconsistency, judgment, or disappointment. So their emotional blueprint equates attachment with potential pain. When they begin to care deeply for someone, their nervous system interprets it as a threat. Missing you doesn't feel warm or romantic, it feels destabilizing. Their heart pulls them toward you while their instinct pushes them away, creating a quiet internal storm that you never witness. Because of this, missing you doesn't show up in the ways most people show affection. Instead of sending a message that says, I wish you were here, they distract themselves with work, hobbies, screens, or routines. Instead of moving closer to the source of their longing, they create emotional space to reduce the sense of vulnerability. That's why avoidants often appear distant precisely when they're feeling the most. Their inner world is louder than their outer actions. Their missing you is not a call for connection. It's a call to manage the surge of emotion they don't know what to do with. Internally, they may replay the last conversation you had, think of something you said that stuck with them, or remember a moment that made them feel unexpectedly close to you. These thoughts spark a mixture of warmth and discomfort. The warmth comes from the bond. The discomfort comes from the fear of what that bond requires, a level of openness and emotional intimacy they haven't fully learned to navigate. To regulate that discomfort, they create distance, convincing themselves they need space, time, or clarity. But the truth is, the space is not about you. It is about calming the emotional reaction inside them. This behavior can be deeply confusing for someone on the receiving end. When you miss someone, you might feel the urge to bridge the gap, to check in, to ensure connection is intact. Avoidants feel the same longing, but respond to it by widening the gap. Their withdrawal is not designed to hurt you or devalue the relationship. It's designed to protect themselves from the vulnerability that comes with closeness. Understanding this dynamic doesn't make the distance any less painful, but it gives you clarity. Their retreat is part of their emotional operating system, not a reflection of your importance or the strength of their feelings. Silence from an avoidant can feel like rejection, indifference, or emotional absence, but beneath that stillness is a level of overwhelm they rarely show. When emotions rise, especially emotions tied to attachment, desire, or longing, their instinct is not to express, it's to contain. They don't have a natural outlet for their feelings, so those feelings build internally like pressure behind a dam. What looks like calm distance is often the result of an inner emotional flood they are trying to keep under control. Their mind becomes busy, their body becomes tense, and their focus splinters. But instead of reaching outward to regulate, they retreat inward, because turning towards someone emotionally is a skill they never learned to trust. Avoidants often grew up in environments where expressing emotions brought no comfort, validation, or safety. Maybe they were told not to cry, to toughen up, or to handle things on their own. Maybe closeness was inconsistent or unpredictable. Over time, they wired themselves to believe that relying on someone emotionally only leads to disappointment, and that the safest way to cope is through self-sufficiency. So when they start to feel more than they're comfortable with, missing you, wanting you, thinking about you, their system interprets it not as something beautiful, but as something destabilizing. Their silence is an emotional pause button designed to prevent overwhelm from spilling over. To you, the silence feels cold. To them, the silence feels necessary. When they pull back, it's often because they don't know how to sit with the intensity of what they're feeling. They're not avoiding you. They're avoiding the emotional version of themselves that feels too exposed. Their mind becomes filled with contradictory thoughts, wanting connection but fearing its consequences. Remembering moments with you but being unsettled by how much they affected them. Imagining reaching out but freezing at the thought of emotional vulnerability. This overwhelm turns into paralysis, and paralysis turns into silence. Even small emotional cues can set off this internal chain reaction. A thoughtful message from you, a reminder of shared intimacy, or a moment of vulnerability on your part can stir emotions in them that feel too much. Rather than lean into the warmth, they instinctively cool down their responses to regain equilibrium. It's their version of emotional regulation, even though it looks like emotional withdrawal. Their silence is also a way of preventing themselves from being consumed by what they're feeling. They may worry that if they respond immediately, they'll say something vulnerable, reveal too much, or open a door they're not ready to walk through. The space they create is not a punishment, it's a coping mechanism. It helps them reduce the intensity of what they feel so they can function without feeling overtaken by emotion. What's painful is that you only see the outside of this process. You witness the quiet, the slow replies, the disappearing acts. You don't witness the internal overwhelm, the overthinking, the conflict between desire and fear. Their silence hides the emotional noise they don't know how to share. And understanding this doesn't excuse the behavior, but it reveals the truth. Their distance is a reflection of emotional overload, not emotional indifference. The hidden moments of longing for an avoidant are almost never visible, yet they are real, persistent, and intense. On the outside, it may seem like they have moved on or that your presence barely registers in their life. But internally, their mind is constantly replaying fragments of time spent with you, snippets of conversation, or fleeting gestures that left an impression. They may think about the sound of your laughter, the way your eyes lit up during a shared moment, or even the subtle ways you comforted them without needing words. These thoughts are quiet, private, and often tinged with both warmth and unease, because experiencing them reminds them of the vulnerability they fear. Avoidants rarely act on this longing, unlike someone more comfortable with emotional expression who might reach out immediately when thinking of you. The avoidant often holds it inside. They might hover over your contact information on their phone but never hit send, or scroll through old messages without responding. Every memory of you triggers an internal conversation. Do I reach out or do I protect myself? The act of thinking about you becomes both a source of pleasure and discomfort, because remembering your presence awakens feelings they haven't fully learned to process. Their longing is intense, but it is disguised as detachment. The things you think they don't notice, the shared jokes, your small acts of kindness, the quiet intimacy, are etched in their mind, replayed often in moments of solitude. These hidden moments of longing often appear in subtle behaviors they themselves may not consciously recognize. They might suddenly seem distracted, daydreaming about an event involving you, or pause when a song or scent reminds them of you. Yet, because they are uncomfortable with overt displays of vulnerability, these moments are internalized. They may even try to distract themselves with work, hobbies, or social engagements, but the memories always find a way back, surfacing unexpectedly and leaving them in quiet tension. Their longing is almost paradoxical, invisible to you, yet undeniable within them. Even when avoidants are with others, or appear completely present in daily life, traces of you linger. They might reference something you said long ago in a fleeting comment, or notice details that remind them of you, only to suppress the impulse to acknowledge it. This suppression isn't a reflection of indifference. It's a way to maintain a sense of control over their emotions. They are acutely aware that leaning into these moments of longing could create emotional exposure they are not ready to handle. Their desire is real, but it is cloaked in discretion, hidden behind the walls they've built to protect themselves. Understanding this hidden longing is key to comprehending the avoidant dynamic. It explains why their actions often seem inconsistent with their emotions. You might interpret their quiet as disinterest, but in reality, their inner life is preoccupied with thoughts of you, rehearsing memories and replaying interactions that are meaningful. Their longing exists in a silent, invisible realm, one they navigate alone, managing feelings they are not yet equipped to express. It is a longing that is both deeply personal and profoundly hidden, creating a tension between what they feel and what they show, a tension that often goes entirely unnoticed by the people they care about most. The behavior of an avoidant is never a straightforward reflection of your worth, yet it is often misinterpreted as such. When they pull away, remain silent, or create emotional distance, it's easy to take it personally and assume it means you are not enough, that somehow your love, effort, or presence falls short. The truth is, their withdrawal is rarely about you. It is about their internal struggle, their emotional history, and the patterns they've learned for coping with intimacy. Avoidants have developed a system to protect themselves from feeling vulnerable, from feeling dependent, and from experiencing the potential pain of closeness. That system often operates unconsciously, which makes their behavior appear puzzling, cold, or even cruel. But it is rooted in self-preservation rather than judgment of your value. From childhood experiences to past relationships, avoidants often internalize the belief that expressing emotional neediness or relying on someone for comfort is unsafe. This can create a deep-seated fear of closeness, where even the idea of being emotionally exposed triggers anxiety. When you enter their life and begin to evoke attachment, longing, or deep connection, it activates these fears. Their instinctive response is to retreat, not because they care less, but because the intensity of what they feel is unfamiliar and potentially destabilizing. Emotional closeness becomes a paradox, something they desire deeply yet fear intensely. They miss you, they think of you, and they may even long for a relationship with you, but their coping mechanism is to step back and regain control, creating a tension that is easily misread as lack of interest or affection. This dynamic highlights an important truth. Your role is not to decode or fix it. While you might feel the urge to chase, to coax them into expressing themselves, or to bridge the distance they've created, doing so can often trigger their avoidance even further. The more someone tries to solve or control the avoidance emotional reactions, the more they reinforce the very patterns that keep distance in place. Understanding this allows you to separate their behavior from your self-worth. Your value is not contingent on their ability to meet you emotionally at every moment. Their patterns exist independently of your presence, effort, or love. Recognizing this distinction also opens the door to compassion without compromise. You can empathize with their struggle, acknowledge that the withdrawal stems from fear, overwhelm, and learned behaviors, without sacrificing your own emotional needs. Their silence, their hesitation, or their avoidance is about their relationship with vulnerability, not about how deserving you are of love and attention. When you stop interpreting their withdrawal as a personal failing on your part, you free yourself from self-blame and resentment, and you can approach the relationship with clarity rather than confusion. Ultimately, their behavior is a mirror of their internal state, not a measure of your worth. By understanding that avoidance is a protective mechanism rooted in their own emotional history, you can cultivate a perspective that distinguishes between their limitations and your value. This distinction empowers you to navigate relationships with avoidance consciously, recognizing when to exercise patience, when to offer understanding, and when to prioritize your own need for connection. It is this awareness that allows you to engage compassionately without diminishing yourself or mistaking their patterns for reflections of your importance. Understanding the patterns of avoidant behavior can help you cultivate compassion and patience, but it should never come at the expense of your own emotional needs. One of the most important truths to grasp is that you deserve a love that shows up consistently and openly. A love that communicates longing instead of hiding it, that meets your vulnerability with reciprocity rather than triggering distance. Avoidance can often create confusion because their inner world is full of feeling, even when their outer behavior seems absent. But the key is recognizing that consistent emotional availability is a standard, not a privilege. A relationship should feel secure enough that missing each other is expressed rather than suppressed, and closeness is nurtured rather than feared. If someone cannot meet you in that way, it is not a reflection of your worth, but rather a reflection of their limitations in handling emotional intimacy. Choosing relationships that honor your need for connection requires clarity and self-respect. When you begin to see avoidance for what it is, a protective mechanism, not an indictment of your value, you can step back from taking responsibility for their emotional regulation. Their reluctance to express longing, to reach out, or to engage openly is not a challenge for you to overcome. It is a sign that their capacity for consistent emotional presence may be limited. Recognizing this frees you to prioritize relationships where affection, attention, and care are naturally reciprocated rather than pieced together from their sporadic gestures. Your emotional energy is valuable, and it deserves to be met with a level of reliability that fosters growth, trust, and genuine intimacy. Deserving a love that shows up also means understanding your own boundaries and what is non-negotiable for your emotional well-being. When longing is constantly one-sided or when affection is unpredictable, it erodes confidence and creates a cycle of anxiety. By knowing what you need in a relationship, expressed care, consistent attention, and reciprocal vulnerability, you set a standard that protects your heart. It allows you to differentiate between someone whose avoidance is a temporary pattern they can work on and someone whose avoidance reflects a deeper incompatibility with your needs. Standing firm in your expectations doesn't make you demanding. It makes you self-aware and empowered. Moreover, Choosing a love that shows up openly encourages you to model the behavior you value. When you communicate clearly, express longing appropriately, and nurture connection, you reinforce the standard you deserve. You no longer feel compelled to chase or decode hidden emotions because the expectation is clear. Intimacy is mutual, consistent, and emotionally safe. This mindset cultivates relationships where both parties feel free to express desire, affection, and vulnerability without fear of triggering withdrawal or discomfort. It fosters trust and security, which are the foundations of lasting emotional connection. Ultimately, prioritizing a love that shows up is an act of self-respect and discernment. It's a declaration that you will not compromise your need for emotional presence in favor of a dynamic that leaves you questioning your importance. While compassion for an avoidant's internal struggles is healthy, it should never overshadow the understanding that your emotional fulfillment matters equally. You are worthy of connection that is expressed clearly, consistently, and without fear. A love that reaches for you as boldly as you reach for it, and one that allows both partners to thrive without the weight of hidden longing or suppressed emotions. Choosing this standard ensures that your heart is met with the care, attention, and affection it deserves, rather than being left in the quiet shadows of avoidance. In conclusion, understanding what missing someone looks like to an avoidant allows us to see beyond the silence, the distance, and the withdrawal, revealing a complex inner world full of hidden longing and emotional struggle. It reminds us that their behavior is never a reflection of our worth, but a reflection of their own fears and coping patterns. And that while compassion is valuable, our priority must always be our own emotional needs and boundaries. We deserve relationships where love is expressed openly, consistently, and without fear, a love that meets us fully and wholeheartedly. Thank you all for listening, for opening your hearts to this perspective, and for taking the time to understand both the visible and invisible dynamics of human connection.